Hi, welcome to this week's episode of the Wellbeing Show. I'm your guest, Noel, and we've got some amazing people on today. And I was talking to them just before the show. I'm a bit of a fanboy of this place. It's HMP Grendon and Spring Hill. And I better say there's Spring Hill, otherwise I'll get in trouble. I've got the governor of Grendon and Spring Hill with me, and also one of the prison staff from Grendon itself. Grendon is I think it's the UK's only, but I'll be put in my place if I'm wrong. I think it's the UK's only therapeutic community prison. And it's surrounded by an open prison called Spring Hill. And I visited it in my youth, which was a very, very long time ago now. But I remember being blown away by it when I went there with a theatre company when I was 23 or 24, I think. It was a very unique experience. And it is a very unique prison. As always, if you've got any questions, please WhatsApp them to me. 07506 319 745. I should say that you can only see me if you're watching this on a video. It's simply because we're protecting people's identities, simply because it's about confidentiality, and it's about safety. And so that's enough from me. So do you want to introduce yourself, folks? We've got the governor first, maybe. Introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Olivia, and I'm the governor of Grendon and Spring Hill. So
Right.
it's two separate prisons, but I'm the governing governor of both prisons, so I sit across both.
Brilliant. Welcome. And we have a member of your staff from Grendon with us as well.
I know all. I'm Anna. I'm a specialist officer. I work on one of the communities in Grendon.
Super. Thanks so much for coming in and making time in what has got to be a very busy schedule. I really appreciate you both taking time. And either of you can jump in and answer these questions, but I'm just tell us a little bit about why Grendon is unique in your sort of opinion. What makes it different, and if you've got experience of working in other prisons, maybe as well, you can tell us what's different about it. Either one of you can jump in.
Okay, so I'll answer that first of all. So it's the only whole prison in the country that operates as democratic communities. So the different thing about Grendon is that each community within the prison operates as a separate democratic community.
Okay.
So each community has their own therapeutic values, they have their own constitution. The staff teams that work within that community only work with those prisoners in that community. They're
Right.
quite a small community, so the main communities are about between 40 to 45 prisoners.
Yeah.
We have an assessment unit which takes up to about 40 prisoners.
Yeah.
So prisoners self-refer to come to Grendon. So they refer themselves with the support of their staff in the prison they're in. Then we do an assessment prior to them coming. And then when they come to Grendon, they are on the assessment unit for between 3 to 6 months before they get allocated a community. So that's very different to what you would get in a different type of prison.
Yeah, and maybe people, I mean, because I was telling you before the show, I've got a sort of background as a psychotherapist working forensics, which means working with people who've been sent to hospital rather than prison. I also got a background in working in prisons. It is unusual to hear, and I think probably unique to hear that sort of prisoners want to come to Grendon. There isn't, I can't think of that many places where prisoners want to go. Am I right in thinking that's unusual?
It is unusual, but also some of them do have it as part of their sentence plan that they would benefit from therapy.
Yeah.
So the other different thing about our work here is we're a co-commission service.
Right.
So I've got NHS funding and OPD funding as well as HMPPS funding.
Yeah.
So every bed is treated as a clinical bed. So people come here for treatment to undergo psychotherapy.
Yeah.
So they're coming here for a very specific reason, as part of their sentence plan, as part of their sentence, and overall, it's to reduce the risk of their reoffending.
Yeah. So we'll come to the idea of sort of therapeutic interventions as part of criminal justice in a second, because people may be confused about what does that mean, and we can talk about what that is. But just to sort of hone down on this, because I'm a bit of a nerd and want to understand this a bit. Grendon isn't also, or is it also, a psychiatric hospital? So
Definitely not a psychiatric hospital.
okay, yeah,
it never was actually. So it's not a psychiatric hospital. The staff that work here are either prison staff, and we also employ, as part of that, we have clinical staff. So we have prison employed psychologists, we have psychotherapists, and we have therapy managers.
right.
And also prison officers, who are specialist officers, also deliver and facilitate psychotherapy, which is unusual or different to what you might have in another prison.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing that I'm intrigued in that, and I'll come back to why I'm intrigued in that, because of this thing about this therapeutic community or community approach.
Yeah.
Communities, they're wing based, as it were. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Olivia,
go on, carry on, Anne.
say that Olivia mentioned there's 4 communities
Yeah.
which obviously run like their own community. We also have the assessment, but we also have a 20-bed unit, which is TC plus. So it's obviously a community for people with learning difficulties as well.
Wow. Okay. Is that an enclosed community? So only people with learning disabilities are part of it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So people are assessed. So people who go onto that unit have already been assessed to have specific learning difficulties. So they need a slightly different approach to psychotherapy, a bit less intensive, and the regime on there is slightly different. Yeah. The other interesting thing about Grendon is we don't only have psychotherapy, we also have complementary therapies that run alongside it. So we have core creative therapy, so we have art therapy, psychodrama, and music therapy, as well as other parts of the regime where prisoners can engage in education and work in the afternoons when they're not engaged in therapy.
Right. And then Spring Hill is an open prison that's sort of physically, if I remember rightly, located around the outside of prison. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not around the prison, so it's opposite the prison. Opposite the prison. So Spring Hill is an open prison, so that provides a resettlement function for prisoners who are have either been in custody a long time or who are deemed suitable to be in open conditions. So at Spring Hill, we're the reintegration back into the community part of the sentence. So I've got prisoners over there who work out as well as go, as also have home leave and also have time with their families in the community. So it's a very different prison to Grendon. They're completely different, actually. You couldn't be more different.
Yeah. And so the idea of an open prison is to sort of gradually reintegrate somebody back into their community of origin. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's a transitional approach, so as prisoners are coming towards the end of their sentence, that they have time in open conditions to get them ready for release, to hopefully so they can leave with settled accommodation and settled work, and they can have improved family ties, so they can have time with their families in the community as well. So resettlement prisons and open prisons are a really important part of the prison sentence.
Yeah, because obviously if you've been in a very highly institutionalized environment where decisions have been made for you, and you're suddenly released into an environment where you have to make all your decisions again, that may well be very overwhelming, right?
It can be really overwhelming. And so some prisoners, even for staff actually, when you've worked in a closed prison and you go to an open prison as a member of staff, it can feel quite weird because you've got people walking around and people aren't picked up anymore. So staff go through a similar transition when they move from closed to open prisons as prisoners do. And for many prisoners, it can be quite destabilising initially because they have such control of their lives, and suddenly nobody's unlocking their door anymore. They've got their own key. They have to make their way down to get their food, down to the dining hall. They have to make appointments without anyone chasing them up. In terms of their kind of how they manage their lives, it can be quite challenging actually. So we also in Spring Hill have what's called a pair service. So it's OPD funded, so they work with the more complex men who need more support in managing their emotional behaviours, their mental health, their physical health. And actually it's an integrated service, but they work with up to about 25 prisoners in a more sort of supported therapeutic way than you wouldn't have necessarily had that, a few years ago.
What's OPD, just so I know?
It's the personality disorder. So
Right.
we call it it's offender person. It stands for offender personality disorder,
Right.
but it's a separate kind of part of the organisation. So it's all the OPD people that work in that field. They work very closely with us because they commission the service that we deliver at Grendon and at Spring Hill, and they work obviously with prisoners who fit into that service.
So can I ask a question of you, Anna? Do you mind?
No,
Have you always been in Grendon, or have you worked in other prisons?
Yeah, I've been at Grendon quite a long time. Previously, when I joined the job, I joined in a local prison, and I was there for 3 years, and then I got the opportunity to come to Grendon on secondment. I came here for about 6 months, and then the governor at the time asked me if I would like to transfer permanently, which I took the opportunity to, and then I've been here ever since.
Wow. I'm just intrigued. Why did you want to join the prison service? What attracted you? I don't mean that as a joke. I'm genuinely interested.
So for me, initially, I left college and I was in catering, and there was a couple of incidents where I'd lost my job through the contract had been given to another company. So I wanted kind of like a job where, I had where it could be career, good pension, and good money. And I went to the job centre and I saw an advert for the prison service, and I thought, oh, okay, I like that. I might go into the prison service for those reasons, but also to take my what I'd learned, my catering, to be a catering officer. But I didn't. I stayed disciplined because that's what I enjoy. And obviously, even after the amount of years that I've had it in, the ground floor is where I like to be.
Right. What is it that you like about it, Anna? Because I think a lot of people might be listening thinking, I couldn't imagine doing that as a job. It must be really, really hard work and frightening and difficult. What do you get out of it, do you think?
I think job satisfaction.
Yeah.
I think initially when I joined the prison service, I was in a local. I couldn't build kind of like professional relationships with the men because they weren't in there for very long.
Yeah.
I wasn't part of their rehabilitation. So, I thought, well, that's where I would like to be, is kind of like to be part of the man's journey, to see them kind of like, succeed and try something different, do therapy, and move on and rehabilitate themselves.
Had you known much about therapy before you joined Grendon, or was it just like, what is this weird stuff they're doing?
No, I didn't know anything about it, actually.
Right.
Anything. So, when I came and I was put straight onto a community, and then, that's where I think I learned from on the ground floor.
And your boss, the governor.
So I started as a prison officer. So I went to university. I did a degree in international relations, actually.
Did you?
And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life.
Right.
And I came home in my last year, and I saw an advert in the paper for prison officer. So I thought, well, I don't know, that sounds all right. Don't know anything about it. Went to a service station and did some tests that you had to do in some role plays. And they asked me where I wanted to work, and I didn't actually know where any prisons were particularly. So I just circled 2 that were in my county. And I went for a visit, and I'd never been in a prison before. And I just said, can I come for 6 months and then I'll get a proper job? And they said yes. And that's how I joined the prison service, and that was 26 years ago. So so I was a prison officer for 4 years actually before I then started kind of working my way up into doing different jobs in different prisons, and I've ended up back here at Grendon and Spring Hill as the governor. I had worked here previously, actually.
I did.
Yeah. But funnily enough,
what was your first experience then of coming to Grendon and Spring Hill, but in particular Grendon, I guess?
I didn't know anything about it, and I'd worked at a prison that was 6 miles away, and I had no clue what they did at Grendon. But I actually worked in Spring Hill first,
right?
So I worked on the open side. But when you're duty governor, you have to work across both prisons.
Okay.
So I'd come into Grendon, and do my rounds and go onto the wings and stuff. And that's where I started to really see that how living in a community and how people have to learn how to get along with each other. They have to learn how to compromise. They have to learn how to, have arguments, but then be able to resolve it. It's like living in a family, but in a very intensive way. Because within the community, each prisoner is also assigned to a group, and they do all their therapeutic work in that group, and they can't change groups. So they'll work within that group for the whole time they're here within that community. So it's very difficult, actually. Therapy is not an easy option by any stretch.
You don't have to tell me.
Yes, but what I've really enjoyed is over the years, people I've known at Grendon who I've then seen later on in different prisons, you can really see the difference in how they approach life and how they manage themselves. And for a lot of prisoners, when they come to Grendon, the first 18 months is normally really difficult and really tough. And then there's always a bit of a light bulb moment at some point where they go, I get it now. And they can see where their lives have gone wrong or their lives have gone right, or where they're, where things have happened to them in the past and why they've made the choices they've made, where they've ended up committing, a quite a serious offence, which most people here have done that.
Yeah. So that's a good point at which to discuss this issue. So when I was first trained into forensic work as a clinician, I'd already qualified. My first job was in a forensic ward up in Scotland, and sort of very much I was given the clear instruction that the focus of the work was public safety, which I think you mentioned earlier on. You didn't use that term, but the idea is that you're working to make somebody safer in the community upon release. Yeah.
So the whole work we do here is all about reducing risk. And reducing the risks that they present when they come here. So, I mean, Anna can talk a bit more about the work that is done around that, because she works on the wings. But ultimately, what you want is prisoners to leave here less likely to reoffend. And actually, all of the evidence that we have and the research that's been done around Grendon is that the reoffending rate is far lower for prisoners that have undergone intensive therapy than if they hadn't. So Anna can talk a bit more about that, because they get set goals, don't they? And they have therapeutic targets. And
tell us, Anna, about this push towards safety and what that involves for, say, a prototypical. Say if I turned up tomorrow, what would happen if I was if I managed to get through that referral process? I was a prisoner, and then what would you take me through? What would you introduce?
So the first thing which people, or the men which come to kind of like Grendon, is kind of like, I think it kind of like shocks them, because they'll come into reception and the reception officer will shake their hand and ask them for their first name. And then us as prison staff will introduce ourselves by first name, and I think that's where we're trying to kind of like break down those barriers with them.
How is that different from, say, going to another prison?
My experience from when I was at the local prison, you didn't use first name terms. So and that's what I was going to say. My first kind of like shock was when I came to have a look round at Grendon. I walked through the gates, and there was the PO at that time. They were principal officers, and this prisoner just said, "All right, John, how you doing?" I was like, "John?" Oh, I'm there saying, "Sir, yes, sir, no, sir." But that was different, and I think that does work, because they see you as kind of like human beings. They see past the uniform. That's what we're trying to do, and exactly the same is not being non-judgmental against them. They've committed something quite serious, but they're not behaving that way now. We need to see the person to get the work done.
And so then what would happen? I'm greeted with first names, and I'm a bit shocked by this, because I've been through another system. And then what happens to me?
So they'll be in reception, they'll go through all their property, and then they'll be escorted down to the assessment unit. And then they'll be introduced to the staff. They'll be shown where their cell is, where they'll spend a period of like Olivia said, 3 to 6 months there. On that particular night, they'll have a first night induction. So because we've got kind of like night stand, they'll go through all the system. Night stand, they'll go through the fire procedures.
Yeah.
They'll give the prisoner a phone call home, to allow them to let their family know that they've arrived safely, and then it's kind of like
getting on with the work then.
it is then.
So
It's straight into really
work.
therapy.
And so
what the work involves. What does that involve?
on the assessment unit, they obviously have to go. They'll have a clinical assessment, and they'll go back into their history of their offending and how they've ended up where they've ended up. But they also practice doing therapy, so they'll go into small groups.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like an introduction to therapy, so they know if it's for them or not, and whether they can work with us and we can work with them. So for some prisoners, actually, therapy is not for them. But also we deselect as well. So sometimes on the assessment unit, we'll know that actually we can't work with somebody for a particular reason, or it's not going to work for them.
Yeah.
So there is a period of time in the assessment unit where prisoners do go back to their sending prison, and they don't actually make it onto a community. So around 80% of prisoners that come to Grendon go onto a community and go on to complete therapy. But around 20%, they either deselect themselves or we deselect them for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Difference between the assessment unit and the residential wings is they will only talk about the here and now. They won't go into depth about their childhood, about their offence, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
So that will wait.
Why is that? What's that about?
Because I think for me, it's kind of like opening somebody up, and they might not succeed through the assessment period.
Right.
And then you've also got people, we might have people there who are being convicted of sexual offences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you know, Grendon, we are mixed. People with sexual offences do end up going to normal, the other wings.
Yeah. So the population in that sense, and just so that people know, generally those types of populations are kept separate in other prisons.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's integrated here.
Yes.
So around 20% of our prisoners have been convicted of sexual offences, but the rest haven't. It's all integrated.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's important as well to think about how the staff manage all of this.
Yeah.
So at Grendon, all of the staff who have training to be to deliver, sort of facilitate psychotherapy.
Really?
The prison officer specialists they go on training. We also encourage them to do some other professional development as well, and there's other courses they can do. They also have every week they have sensitivity every week as a group, and then we have monthly supervision, which is an individual supervision with our.
So tell me about sensitivity. Is that a sort of contact group where you're talking about your feelings as staff?
Yes. So we will meet once a week. Sometimes as uniform staff, we might not be able to attend because of shifts, because of rest days, but we do get together once a week, which includes a multidisciplinary team. So it's the wing therapist, psychologist, the band for non-uniform facilitators, and obviously uniform staff. And it's kind of like where you can share things that you might be struggling with within your group, with maybe a particular, prisoner on the wing. It could be that there might be some dynamics within the staff team. Yeah. So it gives you a space where you can air and have other people then to help and support you to get through that.
And are you judged in these groups if you say, I'm really angry with somebody or they've really upset me? What sort of response would you get?
Well, you get a lot of support,
right?
From other people, and then other people will share kind of like they might have similar kind of like feelings to you, or they might kind of like say, well, have you looked at it this way? Is it, do you think it could be? You need to look at it another way. So that's where you get kind of like good support from each other, And I have to say that the teams that work on the wings are very close. They're very contained. It's a very safe place. We do look after each other.
Yeah, and the other important part around that is that all staff, both uniform staff or clinical staff, have to have supervision in order to carry on facilitating groups. So they have to attend a set number of supervision sessions with whoever their supervisor is, to be able to carry on delivery. So if they don't attend those sessions, or they
3 months,
they can't go more than 3 months without having a supervision session.
So is supervision the same as line management, or is it?
No, it's completely different. It's completely different. So it's different.
Tell me about supervision then.
Yeah, it's clinical supervision.
Okay.
And so it keeps the staff safe in terms of how they're managing themselves and how they're able then to support the prisoners that are going through therapy. Right. So actually the support staff here is, really good in terms of that's available, as well as all the other things that we have available for all prison staff. But at Grendon specifically, we wouldn't be able to run without supervision, sensitivity, and some of all of that really, isn't it? And also I have a counsellor on site as well.
I like that word sensitivity. The reason I like it is because institutions in general can be quite brutalizing, and in particular institutions that are dealing with people who've had very brutal life experiences, such as the guys that you're dealing with, and you can end up this secondary brutalization where you're numbing out and you get traumatized. I guess that's the thought there, that you need to remain sensitive as a human being. Is that right?
Yeah, so what we have to try and do is make sure we don't normalize abnormal behaviour. And so for the staff who are working every day in the communities, it is very intensive. The relationships are very strong. They get to know each other very well. They're turned on all the time, if that makes sense. So the prison staff that facilitate the therapy, they are also there to look after the prisoners and keep them safe. So they're there at weekends. They're there in the evening. They take part in social activity with them outside of the core therapy work. But the prison staff actually are there all the time.
It's a really complex role.
Yes. Yeah, and it's very challenging.
The boundaries of that role are just mind-boggling. So tell me, how do you manage that? I mean, it's just because I imagine that when you're, say, facilitating a group, or you're a member of a group that's being facilitated by somebody, and some difficult issues come up that touch upon you personally, maybe you've had something similar yourself, like you're then at work while also having this deeply personal experience. I mean, that's complicated stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about sensitivity, we talk about supervision, but also what we do is when we facilitate a group in the morning, so our groups run from 9 o'clock till 10:30, the prisoners then will have their own feedback. So, even though we've got 5 individual groups, they will go into a room and they will feed back to the rest of the other small groups of what happened in that group.
Right.
Then the staff, while that's happening, the staff will then go and write up their kind of like notes of what happened in the group. But we've also, at the end of it, at 11:15, we do then have a staff feedback. Right. So we will then be able to share if we have any concerns, if anything kind of like came up for us in that, small group that we've done, we can share it at that time.
Yeah. And I guess that's also really important to reassert the professional identity as well, that the purpose of you being there is as a professional to help people sort of progress in their own personal journey, right?
Yeah, and I suppose what's different about the way we work at Grendon is that it's a multidisciplinary approach.
Yeah.
So we have operational staff and non-operational staff and clinically trained staff all working together on a community as part of one team to deliver psychotherapy to two men in therapy who may be in the prison for up to 4 years. I mean, the minimum time is 18 months, but really most people need to be in therapy for between 18 months and up to 4 years. I say up to 4 years, some of them gone a bit longer, but actually there's also a risk if it goes on too long. People can regress. And what you really want is that prisoners then move on from here, either to open conditions, or back, and they continue to progress in their sentence. Obviously, they're coming through to do a piece of work, but it is really important to keep the staff functioning well. So, like, we have the same as any prison, we have a care team. We've also got trained trim practitioners. So Claire is a trim practitioner. So she can actually do assessments for staff if they've undergone like a serious
Trauma.
incident or a trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
We have PAM Assist. I've also got a counsellor on site every 2 weeks, so people can book in a session, like a reflective practice session. So there is a lot to support sort of wellbeing of staff, but you can't kind of get away from the fact it's a more intensive way of working than you might have in a different, like at Spring Hill, for example. The prison officers in Spring Hill are having a very different day to Anna.
Yes, they are. I can imagine.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well because there's a purpose to that intensity, right?
Yeah,
And
there's a real outcome.
Go on, carry on.
There are real outcomes, And when
Tell me about some of the outcomes. We touched briefly upon them. I've heard a figure saying that the reoffending rate of people who've been through the program at Grendon is as low as 20%. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what the research tells us.
Right.
But we know from the contact we have with prisoners that have left Grendon or we've come across in the system that even if they're only here for a short time, and even if they don't make it through the assessment, there still is an impact on their thinking, on their thoughts and behaviour, how they interact with people. Some of the people we have in are obviously very damaged, and this might be the first time they've had a positive interaction with somebody in authority, but there's a good outcome, and some of what we do here is also about role modelling how to have boundaried relationships with people who are professional. It's still a professional relationship, and it has to be very boundaried, but we can role model that. And prisoners who come to Grendon who've had very difficult experiences either in the prison estate or in their own lives, this might be the first time they've experienced something very different that's very supportive and more of a community feel than they may ever have had in their lives.
It reminds me of this idea of asset-based community development, which is because these guys hopefully are going to go back to their communities, aren't they? But they'll go back as very different people that left.
Well, we hope so.
Well, the evidence seems to suggest they do, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Grendon is interesting. I think people won't know this. It's the most researched prison on the planet. There's been so much research done on the sort of strength of your outcomes that it's quite surprising how few people know about it in a sense. But I guess it's a niche market for this sort of research. I'm just aware of time, and I know Anna's got to get back to the wing soon. You've got about a minute to go. Would you go and work anywhere else, Anna, or is this it? Are you sort of bought into this? And if you are, why?
Honestly, no.
Right.
I wouldn't go. I've been here, I am going to say 30 years.
Yeah.
So, and I've been in the prison service obviously 33 years. I just couldn't see myself working anywhere else.
Yeah.
I just, I come in, and I enjoy the job, and I go home, and I know that I've done the best I can.
Brilliant. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It really is. You obviously were there when I visited, when I was 20-something.
Oh no.
You were. I don't remember you, but you definitely, if you've been there 30 years.
Yeah.
It was less than 30 years ago that I was there, so you must have been there.
And she's still here.
And I'm still here. Yeah. That says a lot.
That's incredible. Look, Anna, I'm going to let you go back to the wing. I'm going to finish off with the governor, if that's all right with you. Thank you so much for making time.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mate, I'm just a fan. I really am. I'm a total fanboy of the work that you're doing, and my team as well. When I told you, when I told them about it, they're all just can't wait to watch this episode. There's a lot of love for you lot out here, I'm telling you.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. And hopefully Anna can share that when she goes back to the wing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm going to share the love, Noel.
Yeah.
Share the love.
All right. Nice one, mate. Have a good second. Let's finish off. So, I mean, why is it that we don't know more about this, do you think?
I think that some of it is because we need to get better at actually promoting what we do across the whole service again, because we have to keep reminding people, because people move jobs or leave or and I think sometimes, so when Grendon first started, we were the only prison doing this.
Yeah.
Over time, there are TCs in other prisons now, and there's psychologically informed environments in prison, so they're pipes. There's other like enabling environments that have happened in other prisons. So I think over time we aren't the only show in town, I suppose is what I'm trying to say, but we're still the only prison that operates as a fully democratic community, as a therapeutic community. And I just think
a
sometimes,
centre of excellence for the training
yeah,
in other centres.
yes,
So staff come and train with you, and then they go
yeah,
to.
they train here. Yeah, so we train we train staff that work in TCs across the country here as well.
In a therapeutic community, or
Yeah, so we're a national resource, so we take prisoners from all over the country as well.
yeah,
So I think some of it is just about us making sure that we're promoting what we do, and we're attracting people to come and work here that want to work in this type of environment. And also we're getting the prisoners coming through that need this really intensive work.
yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we do reduce reoffending. We are going to reduce the number of victims, and we are going to keep the public safer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
A pro-social human. A
Yeah.
pro-social human is less likely to do something that hurts another human being. That's it.
Yeah, and it
That's
just takes time. It takes time to break down those barriers. It just takes, the work is very intensive, and it's not an easy option for people. And I think some prisoners come here because they think, it's going to be easy, and it isn't. It's probably some of the hardest time they'll ever do,
Yeah.
because they're putting themselves in a room with people and having to talk about their deepest, darkest secrets, and also face up to what they've done, and actually take responsibility for the harm they've caused in their lives.
Yeah.
And staff are here to support that work, but they also need to be supported as well.
Yeah. It's extraordinary. And I'm just so excited that you've come on today. We have to finish, I'm afraid, because we're just out of time. I mean, I was blown away as a young person going into Grendon. I'm still blown away as an old geezer who's over there with the work. It's quite extraordinary you've managed to keep it going all these years. It seems to me really important that we get a message out to people that there's a way of doing prisons which is really effective, and can contribute really positively to society. And we can make society a better place. And you folks are doing that, right?
Yeah, I think that people who want to come and work in the prison service, every prison has a different role to play. So not every prison can be a Grendon, because that wouldn't work either.
Yeah.
And so every prison has their part to play in the prisoner journey. But actually, for staff who want to come and work at Grendon, it's a different type of experience, and it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But actually, I think that it's just a really interesting, varied job that we do. I've certainly I've come across people here that you wonder how on earth they've managed to kind of get through their life at all, actually. But we're all just real people just doing our jobs, and we're here to do a job. And at Grendon we're here to deliver a psychotherapy, and at Spring Hill we're here to deliver a resettlement regime, and that's what my staff do.
So I know you have to be politically on both sides. I don't have to be.
You do. I do.
I could be completely partial and a total fanboy of the work, and of Spring Hill as well. Like I say, I've been to other prisons, so but it is important to get a message out to the public about the thoughtfulness, the professionalism of people who work within the secure estate.
Yeah.
And the importance that you put into your professional roles, and the importance that you sort of put into keeping society safe. And people need to know that, I think.
Yeah, and that is at the crux of it. We work with some of the most complex, dangerous individuals in the system, actually, but they do leave here in a much better state and more likely to contribute to society than when they came, and they are less likely to hurt anybody again. Yeah. And actually, if we can do that, then we've done our job.
That's it, isn't it? That's the point. Look, just stay there. I'm going to say goodbye to people. I hope people have found this insightful and instructive and understandable, particularly in our current climate. where there's lots of misinformation and this is about giving people real information that's important to the way we live our lives. Thank you so much for coming on. You stay there. I know you've got to get back to you. I'm just going to finish the recording. Do send me messages. If you've got messages for the governor or for Anna, WhatsApp them to me, and I'm sure I'll manage to find a way of getting them to you. And if they can respond, they will. Just want to wish everybody well and on your journey this evening, and I'll see you all at the next show. So bye bye for now.